Hey, Ricky, I'm promoting you to a panelist right now. Yeah, I got you promoted to a panelist, and now I'm unlocking your video. I'm just going to mute you for a second. Unmute. It's got this funky thing where it puts a box over the top of the video. Wait, let me see if I can make you the host. Hang on a second. Ricky Freed. More. It puts a more thing. Oh, wait, hit make host. Hang on. Change host. Okay, now you're going to be host. And then once you're host, you should be able to click on your video feed.
Oh, there we go. Video. There you go.
Great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to go. Okay. All right. I think we're good. So now let me just hit live for, yesterday we had a little problem with the live function. Oh, wait, hang on a second. Now I have to become the host to be able to go live. So let me figure this out. More reclaim host. Okay, perfect. All right. No problem. So yesterday we had an issue with going live on Facebook. There was a problem with the Facebook. I think too many people are doing Zooms right now.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's the case, what we'll do is we'll just record it and then I'll just upload it. But we'll see what happens today. Hopefully we're in good shape. All right. It looks like we're gonna do it here.
Technology, you never know.
You never know. That's the truth. And I have my phone down here too, which I keep that just to kind of look to see if we're definitely live or not.
Kids up there in like Zoom classes too.
Yeah, I think we're live. Okay, we're live. So welcome to the Elevate Academy. Today is April 1st. It's not a day to joke around, obviously, but we got a lot of stuff going on. And my guest today is Ricky Freed. Ricky is the head lacrosse coach at Georgetown University. And how long have you been there now, Ricky? 15 years?
This was my 16th year as head coach, 18 years total, 2 as an assistant. So
2 as an assistant. So been there a long time. An unbelievable record in the Big East. Done an unbelievable job, and also was the head coach for Team USA and won 2 world championships with Team USA as well.
Yeah, a lot of fun with that group.
So not everyone may know this or not, but Ricky was a standout midfielder at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, the Retrievers. And I think your senior year, weren't you MVP of the team as well?
I did get that.
So Ricky brings a lot to the table. It's kind of interesting. You see a lot of the women's programs out there, and it's not to be sexist one way or the other, but there's definitely a lot of male influences and in the women's game. And I remember when I first got into coaching women's lacrosse, a good friend of mine, Brian O'Keefe, whose son Mac O'Keefe, the standout player and All-American for Penn State this year. And Brian was working for STX, and he introduced me to Jen Adams. And we did a clinic with Jen Adams, and I said to Jen, I go, what should I teach the girls? And she said, what would you teach the boys? Teach them the same thing. It's no different. And so it was kind of interesting. How's your influence been as a guy in the women's game? How do you think How do you think it's been portrayed for yourself?
I mean, it's pretty seamless for me. It was as I got in at Hopkins with Janine Tucker. Actually knew her husband, John, a lot better than Janine, but she definitely watched a lot of men's lacrosse, knew a lot about the game, and wasn't afraid basically to kind of think outside the box in the sense of not being a traditionalist.
Right.
So for me, it was pretty seamless. It was agreed. I tell people all the time, outside of knowing the rules, which I think is important, and what the differences are of what you should teach tactically, skill-wise, there's not a lot of difference. There's things that you can't do. I mean, nobody's taking 15-yard shots in the women's game right now,
Right.
for the most part. But that's more equipment-based and physical strength-based than it is tactical.
Right. And also safety because the rules.
Right. So understanding those rules, I think, were a big part of it. But having that reign, I think, Janine was open to having discussions and worked out great for me because I didn't really have to change my thought process. We just ended up discussing, okay, well, this doesn't make sense to me. Why do we do this? And she's like, either here's why, or you know what? I don't know why we do that. Let's think about doing it another way.
Right. Well, listen, I love Janine. She's one of my favorite coaches out there. She's just a really good person. And, she truly, when you interact with her, that she cares about her kids and the kids she's coaching. And right now, she's also continued to go out of the box, and she's got Steele Stanwyck coaching with her. And he's provided his influence now at Hopkins.
Yeah, he's done a great job. To me, the sport's the sport. Obviously, there's some rule differences. But now, when I first got into it, there were no boundary lines. There were no restraining lines. So there were a lot of differences in how you had to play. But now,
and when people hear that, and same thing is when I first started coaching, I think you and I are similar in age, and I graduated Brown in '89. And when I started coaching girls lacrosse and I got the rule book, first thing I did was I read the rules. That was the first thing I did is I read the rules. I'm like, wait, you can't rake it. You can't kick it. These are the things that popped out to me. And then I'm like, wait, what's this that there's no out of bounds? There's no boundaries. Like, what if the ball goes under the bleachers? Whoever gets there first.
Rewards athleticism was the standard line that I used to get. Rewards athleticism. And, if we had boundaries, want to take away from the athleticism of the game, I kind of looked quizzically at them and said, well, does basketball not have athleticism? Does soccer not have athleticism? I mean, every sport has it. So it's evolved. I mean, it's evolved tremendously. There's a lot of traditional aspects to women's lacrosse that I think are important with the non-contact. But I think the changes that have been made in the women's game in the last 2 decades have been significant and have really changed the way it's played and really accentuated the athleticism, in my opinion, of the athletes that are now playing, which is a really high level and skill.
Oh, I think it's unbelievable to watch the athleticism on a women's lacrosse game now, a high level game. It's literally, to me, when the guys didn't go with the shot clock right away, and it was up to the refs to determine,
Right.
if they were pressing it, and it's like give the refs something else to have to put themselves in the middle of, which wasn't fair to them. But the women were the first with the shot clock, and I was like, wow, this is going to change the game. And then adding free movement has been phenomenal in using that. There's so many great aspects of the game, and I love how the athleticism has just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, and that along with the manufacturing of the sticks, I think really changed the skill level. I came from a generation that didn't have the big, deep pockets that they play with now in the guys' game. So most people in my generation could play with it.
I'm turning around because there's a picture on my wall up here from my days playing at Brown, and you look at my pocket; it's about the size of a girl's pocket now, if not smaller.
Yeah. So the technology, the manufacturers have continued to help evolve the game, and the skill level of the players is phenomenal. And you see that addressed by the players that I got to coach at US, that really promote the skill level and the creative play, if you will, with their stick work. And that's been a big part of the game. And you referenced Jen Adams first. I think she was a big part of that, able to play at that level. And in Australia, they do play with a lot of the different rules. They didn't have shooting space I didn't realize that, but they don't have shooting space. So they played it like the men's game, or it was one sport as opposed to two different sets of rules.
Yeah, well, if it, it's really interesting. I think that's one of the toughest things too. Is from a parent standpoint, is understanding the rules. And I love the women's game. Obviously, I have 3 girls. I coach girls lacrosse. I coach high school lacrosse, and have been involved at the highest levels. And I really, really love the game. What always frustrates me when you hear some guy who doesn't understand the differences say, "Oh God, just put helmets on them and let them play." I'm like, they are playing. Right. And the funniest thing is not to knock my Holy Trinity boys team, but every year our girls play the boys at the end of the season, and we haven't lost them yet because the boys have to play with the girls sticks and the girls get to play with the boys stick, and we play the girls rules. And I think the boys right away in the first day, they can get used to it obviously, but that first day they have a tough time handling the ball.
Yeah. Tough time handling the ball, kind of looking around going, what am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to play them defensively if I can't hit them?
Right.
A lot more finesse in the women's game. So there's a lot to take away from it. But I think both sports can borrow from each other and make them both tremendous to watch in different ways.
Now, I mean, I didn't even plan on going down this route with you, but while we're talking about it, are there any rules right now that or changes to the game that you would say, hey, this would make the game better? I know with the WPLL and the Women's Pro League, they've instituted some rules that are definitely different than both high school and college.
Yeah, first let me say I think it's really tough to be an official in the women's game because the rules. While they're trying to get less subjective, there's still a lot of subjectivity to the rules. So how people see the game it can be challenging. So
I'm going to agree with you on that point there too, because I talked to a lot of refs, and one of the things that I was talking to refs about is even the differences between the international game, the college game, the high school game, and the youth game. You literally have 4 different rule books.
And the pro game, add that to it, you have 5 now.
5, exactly. So you have all these different rules. And I know there's been, I think one of the refs told me that in the last 4 years, there's been almost 160 rule changes.
Yeah. And some of those are small. And I think a lot of people like to get that big number. But there have been a lot of rule changes. I mean, the only thing really for me watching the game is I would probably, and this is to take something off the plate of the officials, is I would get rid of 3 seconds because you have shooting space.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
So a lot of people say it's a safety issue. I think that's just like a crutch, frankly. And being my age and being in this as long as I can kind of feel like I can say what I want. But I think it would help ball movement. It would focus on that because if there's shooting space, you're going to give up an 8-meter. I mean, most people don't want to do that. And I just don't think I think it's really an offensive game currently. And I think that would help defenses play a better team defensive concept. If they got rid of the 3 seconds and not take away from the safety of the game, because at the end of the day, you still have shooting space.
Yeah, well, you when you look at that and specifically with shooting space, it also, I think what it does, it allows the refs not to have to watch too much off ball. You're getting called on 3 seconds on a girl who's literally at the top of the 8 and the ball's all the way on the other side, where that girl's really not involved in the play. And that was always frustrating too. Is I get frustrated with my players. I'm like, what are you doing over there? Right. You're standing in the 8. Like, you don't need to be standing there. And also, like, we run some complicated zone defenses and things like that. And I understand. And I tell my girls, there's going to be times where we're going to get called either on shooting space or 3 seconds. That's part of the game. But you want to try to eliminate that as much as possible, so you're not giving up easy or high percentage 8-meter shots.
Absolutely. So that'd be the one thing. I think that the rules committee the last 4 to 6 years has done a great job of bringing the game along. I think Steph Smith, who's the rules editor, has really done a good job of writing the rule book in the college game to make it more black and white, or as black and white as possible in some cases, and reducing the subjectivity. But that would be the one rule that I think right now off the top of my head is something that I submit every year.
Yeah, one thing that I also, and I just look at it, comparing the 2 games, the men's game, where it's 10 on 10, and then you have the women's game being 12 on 12, and you have more offensive players and defensive players in a much smaller confined space where, what are your thoughts on getting rid of the restraining line and just making it the midfield line so that the offense has a full half a field to operate in?
Yeah, that's worked well with the Pro League. I think they've done a nice job. A lot of players weren't sure how they were going to adjust to that initially because it's totally new. And, I'm going to have to stop where? Wait a minute, I'm not involved in the play. But they picked that up pretty quickly. Pretty seamless. The only place that it can be a little sketchy is on the draw at times. But outside of that, I think that would be a very good rule as well.
Yeah, it was funny. I had blown out my knee a while back playing, and I had finally came back, and I was getting back into playing a little bit, and I was up at Lake Placid, and we were short on attack, and I was a goalie and a defender, so I'm like, I'll go play attack, no problem. And I thought I was doing the right thing, and I'm in my girls lacrosse mode, and I'm chasing this defender with the ball, and I run over the 50. I chase him to the far restraining line like I teach all my kids to do, and all of a sudden everyone's yelling at me like, what are you doing? I said, oh, God, I forgot. I have to stop at the 50. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I was riding the whole way.
Yeah, a little bit too far.
A little bit too far. But all right, so the game is definitely evolving. It's incredible when you're watching the athleticism of the players that are out there, and I love hearing your thoughts on what potential changes there might be. Hopefully, we get to a point where we're not getting so many changes every year. And what I'd like to see, which I think would help the refs out so much, is just let's go to a universal rule system.
Yeah.
That, whether it's youth all the way up, that we can teach them. The one thing that, I also hear about is, put helmets on them. It's a safety issue. I know, listen, you're dealing with some of the best athletes literally in the world who are playing the game today in college, because this is the highest level until you get to the World Games, which is elite as well. But the checking around the head, is there a way to almost kind of reduce that? Should we allow the girls going over the head and checking? And the other issue, which I always hear from my girls, is I watch a college game and they're horizontal and their arms are extended, and we have to be at 10-2, and the difference is there just alone in teaching.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of debate about the parallel stick, but I just think that's really so hard to legislate, if you will, because even if you start at 10 and then all of a sudden somebody drives, your stick drops, and you're playing pretty good defense still, and the attacker's initiating the contact, then you're put at a disadvantage. As far as the checking, from my perspective, I think one of the biggest areas that should be focused on is having the officials call the charge, because I think that'll eliminate the extension of the arms, because most defenders are trying to protect themselves at some point, and the attackers are like, go hard, and you'll draw the foul. It's kind of like pro basketball to a certain extent, with sticks though. So I think that was something that needs to be reinforced a little bit better, is the charge call. Again, from my perspective, and I'm an offensive guy, but I would like to see that, because I really don't like seeing people barrel in, get fouls called when they're actually initiating the foul. And
it's almost like how can you play good defense?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm like you. I can be a little sarcastic with the officials at times. And you ask the question like, okay, so they're just supposed to get out of the way. Is that what you're telling me? I'm like, well, no, that's not what I said. I'm like, well, that's what you're telling them right now based on what that call was. Right. So, and it's tough. Again, I think it's a really hard call to make. But you see it in basketball. They're pretty consistent with it. And there's always that little gray area. But I think that's one call that would help the defense a lot more and make the game less physical, in my mind, if they started calling that. Because just like, I'll go back to offsides. This is not a safety issue, but they used to say they don't call offsides because it doesn't really affect the play. As soon as there's a reset on the shot clock, everybody stopped going offsides on purpose.
Exactly. It's so true. In the guys' game, it's a 30-second penalty, right. And you can't even can't put a toe over the line.
And in college, that has really changed. I mean,
it has dramatically.
And so it affects the play. So if they start calling charges when they're actually charges, I think that would really affect how the attackers are going in and then how the defense plays the game. And I think there's a kind of a domino effect in that regard.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, all right. So the big giant white elephant in the room, the COVID virus and everything that's going on, it's obviously affected everyone. How did you guys react as a team, as the Hoya family? How did you guys handle that when you heard the news that, listen, our season's over?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that was really difficult for everybody. And I don't want to minimize that piece of it. First thing we did, we made sure we met with our seniors first, talked to them because it had a bigger impact on the seniors prior to having any idea whether there'd be relief for the season or even thought about that, frankly. So met with the seniors first, talked to them, got the tears out. Didn't get them out, started the tears, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
But, just kind of dealing with something that you've never had to deal with before. Stopping a season in the middle of the season for a team as opposed to an individual who maybe gets hurt. So that's the first piece, met with our team. And we did this all on a Thursday evening, I remember, because we got the call. I actually came home because we weren't sure if the NCAA was going to make this commitment or make this decision. So drove back down to Georgetown, and about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, had the whole team in after we met with the captains or seniors, and just delivered the news. And, from that point as coaches, we let them be with each other because that was really the important piece. I don't know if there's ever really going to be closure in the true sense of the word. But we had kind of a mini senior week. At the end of it, our volunteer assistant hosted dinner for the team, was already scheduled on Friday. So we were able to kind of celebrate the seniors a little bit that day. We took the seniors out on Sunday for brunch as coaches. So again, just try to take steps to normalize a really horrific situation, but keep in perspective that there's something a little bit bigger than lacrosse going on at the same time. So balancing those two are tough because sometimes you talk about that piece and you seem insensitive to the players. You talk about the game too much and you seem insensitive to the societal issues right now. But really trying to balance that. And from that point forward, we've been on Zoom calls twice a week with our kids. Everybody has different connecting pieces that they do. We've continued those with our assistant coaches. And that's going to evolve between now and the middle of May, frankly, how we do that and what we do with them.
Now, I'm assuming Georgetown has switched over to remote learning for the kids?
Yes. Yeah, we left campus. We were on spring break when it occurred. So they left campus that Sunday or Monday following. It's been about 2 weeks now. So they got back, started Zoom classes or virtual learning or e-learning, like everybody is pretty much doing. So the positive to that is they stay on a schedule. They have some sort of routine, which I think is important. The downside, staying engaged and, learning actually. So that's going to be a challenge for everyone involved, from teachers to students. But they're doing a good job with it. We're trying to stay engaged with them. They stay engaged with each other. So, for my generation, technology is not a big connector for me, but it's become a much bigger connector. I spent years trying to tell people to get off their damn phones. Now I'm like, okay, so this is kind of important. So it's a good thing that we have it at this point in time, because you feel less isolated with this technology.
Yeah, you definitely do. And, and part of the reason, we're hosting these is, to get different people in to talk about different topics and just kind of give people a way to hear what, some of the leaders in our sport. And I'm going to have some people outside of lacrosse on here as well to just talk about, hey, what's going on and, keeping the big picture. For me personally, I have two family members that have, very compromised immune systems. So, it's to the point where if I'm going to the store, I'm literally coming back where all my clothes are going in the wash. I'm spraying down my sneakers and doing everything because, I got to be super careful and trying to, go to the store only when we actually have to and, keeping our list of essentials. But I think if we all keep doing our part, we're all going to get through this.
Yeah. And discipline is a big part of it. Everybody knows why we're trying to do this. I think the hard part is the unknowns of how long will this last and when will it be over. I think if the more you can focus day to day, the better off you're going to be. If you look further down the road, because that's kind of a never, it's that light at the end of the tunnel. Well, it doesn't get any closer if you don't know where it actually ends.
Yeah, well, I was listening to a Tony Robbins podcast that he was doing, and one of the things that Tony Robbins talks about is that one human need that is so important is certainty. And he said, we're living in uncertain times, yet people still are striving for certainty. And that's just not realistic right now to have certainty. So what you have to create is certainty is through your routines and your habits that you're doing right now.
Right.
That's going to help you with that need for certainty.
Yeah. And I think it's, certainty is obviously great. As a head coach, you like to know the knowns and you like to be in control from that aspect. But as you look at this, you're going, there's a greater good involved here, not to be too corny, but there's lives at stake if you can just be self-disciplined. And it's not that much to ask. I still go on walks with my wife and my kids because we have trails outside of our house. So we're able to get out and do that for, 30 minutes or so. But getting into a routine, finding out what's important to you, and making sure that you're doing those things makes it passable, I guess. And then understanding why you're doing it. And that, that's a big thing in every society, but finding your why, like this brings a whole new example to finding your why. Like, okay, so why do you play lacrosse? That's different for everybody. Why do we need to self-isolate? That's the same for everybody. And understanding that is, I think, really important in this day and age.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you mentioned your why, why do you coach?
That's changed over the years. I got to be honest with you. When I first started coaching, just because, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. I like this. So I kind of went in that direction. Now it's the connection with the kids. And I still call them kids because I'm 54 years old. So some people get offended by that, but I apologize to them. But they're kids to me. So the connection with the kids, watching them grow, watching them see them come in as 18-year-olds, girls, frankly, and leave as 22-year-old women, is really rewarding. And having a little bit of a part in that growth is, really why we do this. The wins and losses are great, but I look back on my college career and I played hundreds of games. If I go back to, club and college and pros, very few moments you remember, but very few games you remember. You remember the people, and everybody talks about that. You remember the people, you remember the relationships, and that's what is established through coaching from my end. You want to win. Like everybody wants to win. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this for a living. But at the end of the day, the winning is a byproduct of the other pieces, at least for me. And I think for most of my colleagues as well would say the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that's one of the things that's, for a while for me, I sat there and was in the corporate world, and I would ask myself all the time, like, what did God put me on this earth to do? And like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And I remember I was reading a book one time, and Pete Lasagne actually wrote about this in Inside Lacrosse. And I was reading a book and it just said, what do you love to do? And why aren't you doing it right now? And I'm like, man, boy, isn't that just a punch in the face? And I said it to my wife, and she's like, well, why aren't you doing it right now? And I'm like, what? I love coaching. And even when I was at Merrill Lynch, part of my favorite thing at Merrill Lynch was I was in their professional development program, and it was coaching. It was bringing in all the new hires every single month and working with them and helping them and going around speaking around the country about, coaching different ways to do business. And it's like, man, I love coaching. It's that impact that you can have on people. And for me, I was really lucky as a kid. I had phenomenal coaches. My high school coaches, like, some people, go back and they talk about their coaches, and it's like, it's with disgust in some cases. I was super lucky. I had literally, and the coaches that I had in high school, I am friends with all of them to this day, and had unbelievable coaches. And I know the impact that they had on me. And that's the thing that I look at and say, how can I have that impact, on someone else? And if you had to, I know this is, sticking in a corner. And by the way, Ricky and I did not talk about what we were going to talk about. This is all just, I'm hitting him with questions and off the cuff. If you had to describe your culture, your team culture, in a word, could you?
Well, I honestly wouldn't want to use family because I think it's overly used. I would probably say connected, if I had to use one word, but respect is another word that comes to mind. I think it's culture nowadays. Also, that word becomes overused in my mind. But I think it's super important, and that's why I think it's overused, because I think people use that so much that you lose the real value of what that word means.
Right.
And the culture, while as a coach, we are responsible for establishing the culture, the players are the ones that decide what the culture is going to be based on how you lead them, in my opinion. So the example that we set goes a long way in how we deal with them, goes a long way with how they deal with each other. What my values are and how I represent those things to those players goes a long way in what their values become on a consistent basis.
Sure.
Everybody attracts great kids. They're all out there. But how do they interact and what becomes important to them as a group is really what I would describe as what culture is all about. And these moments, our culture right now is probably the best it's ever been, in large part due to the class that graduated last year from us, because 6 years ago, our culture wasn't great, and it's culture kind of ebbs and flows. And the biggest thing that I've learned, one, we have to take responsibility as adults, for what's going on. And I think sometimes I took that for granted. Like, okay, so yes, I say these things, they're going to happen. They happen. Right. And then when you stop acting on them and holding people accountable to what those values are, then things start to slide. And so I've learned that it's a lot more work to put into the culture as opposed to just saying what it's going to be. Is
Sure.
doing the work to make sure that it maintains itself.
Well, it's interesting the point you made about the players and culture, because Dom Starsha was my head coach when I was at Brown, and Pete Lasagne was the assistant. And when I remember talking to Dom one time about when he moved over to the University of Virginia, and he was telling a story about Jay Jalbert, who was a captain at the time, and came to Dom and said, we need to make some changes as a team. And these are the things that we think that we need to do. And, but the nice thing about that, I think, is when you have that open opportunity where a player feels comfortable enough going to a coach and saying, this is what we need. And that year they won the national championship, and with the changes that they did make. But one of the things that Dom said to them was, well, listen, if we're going to make these changes, you guys have to hold the players accountable. It can't just be the coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think I think it's tough this day and age because people, again, gender and generations are different for me on both ends. So, when I grew up, you said what you want, how you wanted it, and people just dealt with it. We weren't worried about how people felt about what you said. It was, if I had a problem with you, I'm like, come on, Dave, get your act together. And it wasn't a little bit probably saltier than that at times, right? And then there'd be a comment back. And then after the game's over or the practice is over, you go out and you're like, okay, we're fine. We don't have to talk about that because it is what it is. This generation now, and they're not good or bad, just factually, when they talk to each other a certain way, they've got to understand that there's a mutual respect and why they're dealing with each other and what's at stake. Because, everybody talks about being best friends. Again, I'm like, well, best friend is best would be like a few people, not 30 people. You don't have 30 best friends. There's people you'd rather hang out with, but you got to deal with all 30 people on the same level. And as long as the players understand that there's different ways of approaching what you're trying to do, because within their personality, they have to do this. They can't all become robots and just fall in line. It's, we have quiet kids, we have loud kids, we have intense kids, we have really kind of, okay, I know how to say this a little bit better, so I'm going to be the communicator on this. But when that intense kid comes in hot, everybody's got to understand, like, that's real. That's just who they are. And they've got to be okay with what the intent is, as opposed to necessarily what they're always saying. And so having real conversations, as you said, being open to that as a coach and being able to have them go, you know what, I don't think this is really important. And me being able to receive that and ultimately decide, yes, it is, no, it's not, clearly. But I think it's great when 18 to 22-year-olds can come to you and have an idea and bring it to you and be open to the fact that you're actually going to listen to them. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with them all the time, but you're going to listen to them and they're going to be heard.
Well, I think that starts with leadership, though. When you have, good, positive leaders are always trying to develop more good, positive leaders. That's what they're trying to do. It's leaders who are in a position of leadership. I wouldn't even say leaders, people who are in a position of leadership who don't let leadership develop and they stifle it. Then you have an issue. I mean, I remember a game we were playing at U15s out in Denver. And it was a crucial point in the game. I had called a timeout, and I'm like sitting there ready to talk about a play. I'm telling everyone, listen to me. This is what we're going to do. And Abby Nye, who's the goalie at Boston College at the time, she's at Boston College now. Abby Nye looked at me. She goes, Dave, excuse me for 1 second. She goes, this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. You're going to shut off. I'm going to come from behind. This girl's not going to know that I'm coming. I'm going to strip her of the ball. I'm going to pass the ball. We're going to get upfield. We're going to score a goal. We're going to send this game into overtime. And I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. But I loved, just seeing her just step up and say, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Made my job pretty easy. And she actually made the play. So it was a lot of fun, seeing kids like step up in those leadership roles. I think that's one of for me, it's as a coach, there's nothing better. I look at, how many kids we have who are captains of their college teams. That's phenomenal. I love every second of it. But that's the whole idea of, leadership, but that's what sports is. Jenny Levy and I were talking the other day about leadership and the impact that sports has on your career afterwards. And she said, not everyone's going to be a lacrosse coach. Other people are going to go into other jobs, and what that impact is and what you're learning on the field. Well, these are all crucial life lessons: how to overcome adversity, how to be a team player, how to be coachable. Those things are everything.
Yeah, well, and all of us talk about that. Those things are talked about on a constant basis. How do I deal with other personalities? It's easy to deal with people that are like yourself and have common goals and ways of getting there. That's simple, but that's not the way life works. We deal with people that have different personalities, different points of view, different perspectives. Dealing with success and failure, as you said. I've yet to play in any game, watch any game, or experience any game that's been perfect. They joke about a perfect baseball game pitching wise. Well, actually, there's still balls that are balls, so it's not perfect, that get hit and fouled off. It's not, you don't throw just 27 pitches that they hit it, throwing out, get out, right? There's no such thing. But you want to work towards that and know that you're not going to accomplish it and be okay with kind of, okay, what can I do to constantly get better? Strive for improvement all the time, but dealing with failure, because the people that know how to deal with that are more successful. People that get stifled by that are the ones that don't continue to move forward.
Well, I agree with that 1,000,000%. We talk about that all the time.
And my old assistant coach used to say this: they're usually tripping something that's going to trip you up, or it's a stepping stone, and it's all on how you look at it.
Yeah. Well, it's like you look at, if you look at Abe Lincoln's timeline,
yeah,
all of his failures. And if you didn't know that he ever became president, you're like, oh my God, this guy was a disaster. Probably one of our greatest presidents. When you look at Edison, how many times he failed in trying to create the light bulb. Thank God he didn't stop. So these are all the great things that, we learn about. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some fun stuff. You had a chance to obviously, coach some amazing players. Who have been, one or two of your favorite players to ever coach, whether it be Georgetown, Team USA, wherever, and why?
God, we're talking like 25 years now, so that's a big window.
Sure is.
Some of my favorite players. Well, I mean, I would probably first go and talk about some of the. I really enjoyed the U.S. because of the people that I got to coach with. We were all head coaches at the time.
And yeah, how odd is that, being a coach of so many players who are coaches?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you think that people are just going to kind of fall into being that coach mode, and actually they fill their roles and go into that player mode pretty quickly. It's they're asking you questions. You're like, I'm like, you know the answer to that. Why are you asking me that question? But so the people that I got to coach with made it a lot of fun and continue to every day, whether it's at Georgetown or whether it was at the U.S. level. But probably challenged the most at the U.S. level because they were all head coaches. And I think that's probably where I developed more of my leadership skills than any other place, because you had to lead there. If you didn't and it was phony, it was pretty obvious.
Yeah, you get called out on it.
Yeah, you're gonna, or they're just gonna go away, right? Like that, they're not gonna believe in you, and it's not gonna last very long. As far as players, one of the, God, I don't even know how to say favorite because it's too hard of a word for me. But Lindsay Monday was a phenomenal leader. And as far as keeping the team together and focused on, where we were going, and kind of sending those messages across. And everybody that, I coached, you enjoy. And everybody at the U.S. kind of was a favorite because they actually did everything you asked them to do. That you joke when you talk about players, like, do you have favorites? You're like, yeah, my favorite's the one that does what I tell them to do, how I tell them to do it, when I tell them to do it to the best of their ability. Like, those are your favorite kids. And at U.S., that was a constant, because if you didn't, you weren't there very long. And so, you got to coach players like that. At Georgetown, I loved Jordy Keir. Probably a lot of people don't know her name, but she was graduated in 2011. She was the only player in Georgetown history to have 100 goals and 100 assists, which, you think back, there's a lot of big-time attackers at Georgetown. But she's the only one that had 100 as she played, and she was a 5-foot lefty attacker, and played with played with a big chip on her shoulder. But she was one of the kids that I really enjoyed coaching. Trying to think, there's so many. I look back at somebody like Jordan Troutman, who's now the coach at Monmouth. She was actually my first.
Did a great job too.
Yeah, she was my first Division I recruit as a head coach. So, those types of things are really memorable. I actually remember, speaking of Jenny Levy, ended up recruiting her from the Carolina camp back in the day. And we still talk about it and kind of joke about it. But while we're playing in the camper counselor game, she actually crushes me in the head with a check. And I'm sitting there like, and then she goes and checks my stick and picks up the ball. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that. She's not like, oh no, what happened?
Are you okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the ball?
I'll check on you later. But, I think there's probably too many to mention. The kids that I still keep in touch with a lot of people. The U.S. people, it's just phenomenal group, and different in different ways. But the last team that I was able to coach, Jen Russell is not a household name.
He is unbelievable.
There's a lot of household names that people know their names, but like
Jen Russell, man,
like super, super team oriented, great leader, great communicator. And because she does the little things, didn't have to do the big things to be noticed. She was a middie in college, and we kind of joked. Actually, we didn't kind of joke. We joked a lot. She talked about having this dodge. I'm like, Jen, you didn't have a dodge. That's why you're a defender at US. You just ran past people. And she was like, no, Dad. We're literally at a banquet. She's like, Dad, you know the dodge? He goes, you didn't dodge. You just ran past people.
Oh, my God. That's great.
Great relationships. But, players like that, Devin Wills clearly is, one of those now household name, or it has been a household name. But, in my opinion, the epitome of what a goalie should be at every level, both athletically, in the cage, out of the cage, as a human being. Just had the opportunity to work with so many. So I'll stop.
Well, I also kind of love the fact that, watching what you did with Devin as an example was you let Devin play her game. They would score some empty net goals every once in a while because she'd be so aggressive in trying to pick off a pass, double a player who she thought she could double, and she'd literally be another defender on the field. But, you let her play that game.
Yeah, no, we actually, I think going into the 2009 World Cup is when we came up with her coming out of the goal. Because based on what Australia did, they had a certain set that they ran. We couldn't go through the crease at the time. Generally didn't play behind the goal.
Right.
So we set up a defense basically that said, okay, here's how we're going to play this, and walk through a lot of different things. Jenny Yu was the defensive coach at the time. Sue Heather was the head coach, and walked through a lot of iterations of it, and evolved to what we did in 2013 and 2017 of basically people stopped going behind the goal against us. So we eliminated 15 yards of the field. Yeah. Because people are like, well, we're not going back there because they're just too athletic and have too much going on. But, those are the things that are fun coaching, get to evolve, see people do different things. And different people have points of view on how you did that. I know some people are like, oh my God, that's not how you play the game.
Go back in the cage, stay in the cage.
Right.
I had, Taylor Marino, who's the goalie at Carolina, played for me, and I coached her since she was a little kid, and I was looking at Taylor. The first time I saw Taylor ever was I was coaching against her in soccer, and I couldn't figure out what position she was playing because she literally was just all over the field. So after the game, some of the girls knew her, and they're like, "Oh, we'll introduce you," because she was the best player on the field. I'm like, "What position do you play?" She goes, "Oh, I don't really play a position. My coach just tells me to go out and make plays." I'm like, "Okay, I love that." And then I found out she was a goalie, and I said the same thing to her. I'm like, "Listen, just go and make plays." And we were playing in a tournament one time with playoff implications. We got the ball with like a minute and a half to go down on our end. And I told Taylor to sprint to the other end of the field and go kill the clock behind the other team's goal. And she's behind the other team's goal. Goal is empty. And she's just the best athlete on the field and killing the clock. And just laughing my head off just watching her,
That's
just
funny.
literally the best athlete on the field.
Yeah, no, it's nice when you get a benefit of having a goalie that's super skilled and also is a phenomenal athlete. Combining those two is a pretty special blend.
No doubt. Well, a couple of things I just want to also talk about because I know obviously some big news just came out. Monday the NCAA voted, and that's going to have a big impact on a lot of programs. And I think some programs, I was texting back and forth with a friend of mine who was a college lacrosse player back in the day, and we're still very involved in the game. And he said, "Dave, what are your thoughts on how is this going to affect?" He goes, "Do you think the rich are going to get richer because of this?" And I said, "Yeah, I think in some cases it does because the way that the NCAA vote, as the way I'm interpreting it, it's across the board. There are certain schools that I think are going to be at a disadvantage. And, you look at the Ivies. I think the Ivies will be at a disadvantage because you're not able to play your fifth year. Yet, yesterday, Michael Sowers, who's the first team All-American from Princeton, pulled out of Princeton right now in the spring so that he can go back. That's the only way in the Ivies that kid can go get that extra year is if you completely pull out. But, I look at a school like you, Georgetown, high academics, really hard to get into. And, Georgetown kids, graduating and going out and getting great jobs. So how's it going to affect you when you have seniors that might have jobs lined up?
Yeah, well, and that's a discussion we're having now with our kids, and it's real, right? So there's a perceived competitive disadvantage to that, but there's a perceived advantage to that in other ways when you're recruiting, what you're attracting kids to. So the Ivies have plenty going for them at the same time, even though that this piece is a negative in a certain light. But our discussion is pretty simple from my perspective. And again, I'm a pretty simplistic guy. Like, look, emotionally, it'd be great to get an extra year of lacrosse. Like, who wouldn't want to go back and play an extra year of lacrosse if you could with your friends?
I would.
Exactly. Everybody's like, yeah, I want to do that. Now, does that make sense on multiple levels? And that's the discussion we're having with our kids right now. We have arguably one of the best players on our team, Natalia Lynch from Long Island. She has a job right now. Does she have that job promised to her if she takes a grad school year? Is there a grad program that actually makes sense for her? Can she afford to go back to school for another year? Like, those are all pieces of the puzzle that I think from the outside looking in, people just go, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Or this is going to be miserable, depending on your perspective, I guess. But really sitting down and having that conversation as a whole, as opposed to incrementally, or in pieces. like, okay, does this make sense for you, each of you individually, not from a class perspective, not would it be great to have everybody back again? Does it make sense for you if you're ready to kind of move on with your life? Because at some point that happens. You're like, you know what? I'm ready. The kid, Grant Ament, he's like, look, I've hit this point in my time and I'm ready to move on. And there's a lot of people that have opinions about that. That's his decision. That's not right or wrong. That's good for Grant. And I don't know him from Adam, but that's his decision to make based on him and his family and what he needs and what he wants and desires. So we talk to our players about that. Not what do they owe me? What do they owe our program? What do they want out of this? Why do they want it? And if it makes sense on a multiple levels, then great. I'm going to help you accomplish this in any way I can. If it doesn't, I'm going to thank you for what you've done. We're going to stay in touch, that sort of thing. Right. Wish you the best as you move forward. But I do think the rich are going to get richer. I think there are people that have money that can bring a number of people back, and that's going to help them. At the end of the day, we already know that's the case regardless. I think that's constantly going to happen. So we pick and choose where we coach, where we go to school, what we do, why we do it.
Right.
And, you can't look at other people and go, God, I wish I had what they had. Well, if you want to change your situation, change your situation. So you pick and choose where you are, be grounded in where you are, be satisfied where you are. And if you need to make some changes, go ahead and try to make them, but understand where you are and why you're there. And if you do that, I think it becomes a little bit easier conversation at the end of the day instead of more difficult.
Right. But also, the one thing that's new, obviously, only in the last few years is the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So, you're seeing some big names hitting the transfer portal right now, too. And do you think there's going to be more schools like Georgetown who are going to be looking at and saying, okay, who are the best Ivy kids that maybe we can consider getting them in here to do a grad school year and go after kids like that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a piece to that. There's a financial piece that goes along with that as well, though. And so, those are all things to be considered. But I think for this year, 100% that's going to be in play. How it's all going to play out at the end with everybody having an extra year, who the heck knows? People ask me that, like, well, what's that going to mean? I'm like, I'm not even going to pretend to give you an answer on that because I don't know. Because the same kids that are emotionally excited about that right now, let's say there's a freshman that's like, oh my God, I didn't get much playing time. That's great. I'm going to get a whole nother year. 3 years from now, they're in an entirely different place than they are right now. Right. So only time will tell what that means. And from my perspective, it's you play within the rules that you're given. As the game evolves, as the games change or it evolves, you adjust to those things. And you do the best with what you have. And you're honest with yourself about, are you doing the best with what you have? I think that's the other piece. Not just kind of going, I'm doing the best I can, but I don't have these things.
Well, it's interesting, what you're saying too is Jenny Levy talked about that the other day. She said, you're talking to the players, you need to be flexible. You got to be open to change.
Right. So, I it's going to have a big impact on a lot of people. I read, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read that Katie Hogue is going back to Carolina. Well, there's obviously another kid either coming in or coming up within their program that thought they were going to get more playing time next year. That's now adjusted. But if you're actually team first, then you're excited that Katie Hogue is coming back and playing for you.
Right.
She's a pretty damn good player. If
yeah.
you're a coach,
I had Tommy Marachek on yesterday. We were talking about that. And, Tommy had, brought up a point. He said, if you had offered John Zilberti an extra year and he had the opportunity to learn one more year with John Zilberti rather than only having 1 year, would I have been a better player because I had the opportunity to learn from John Zilberti?
Yeah, so, all your perspective. Yeah.
Maybe that incoming freshman at Carolina, she becomes a better player over her 4 years because she had an extra year with Katie Hogue that she wouldn't have gotten. So, absolutely. Who knows? But listen, I'm gonna wrap it up. So you're gonna be the first person that we're doing this with. So we're gonna do two things. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna let you ask a question of the next person that we interview. So if you could think of a question that and you don't have to give me it right now, so you can do it at the end. But then the other question that we want to do is what the Elevate Academy is really all about. It's about education. It's about preparing student athletes, not just for the game, but for life in general and everything. And I've had the opportunity to have some phenomenal mentors, people who have really guided me down this road. So what I want to ask everyone going forward is this: what's the best piece of advice that someone else gave you?
Well, and I'll relate it to the game or my current job. The best piece of advice, and it wasn't given to me directly, it was actually read in a book. Anson Durant, everybody knows who that is. Well, most people know.
We talked about him yesterday, yeah.
You know, the soccer coach down in Carolina.
21 national championships.
Talked about coaching female athletes. And as reading the book, as I recall it, and again, I'm not going to quote it, but as I recall it, was on the field, treat them like athletes. Off the field, treat them like women. And to me, that was kind of an enlightening moment, if you will, because young me just treated everybody like the same. It didn't really matter, right? And you saw I was like, okay, you know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. As an athlete, I don't have to treat them any differently because they want to be coached and they want to be pushed and they want to succeed at a high level. Off the field, there's a different way to go about that relationally. So professionally, that's the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Personally,
when I first started coaching girls lacrosse, and I wish I remember who said it to me, but I just don't remember. But someone said to me, they said, just remember this: boys feel good when they play well. Girls need to feel good in order to play well.
Yes, well, that is true. That is very true. Except for occasional, there's exceptions to every rule, but as a rule of thumb,
of course,
that's definitely true.
All right. So as we wrap it up, what is your question that you want for our next guest? What should the question be?
Well, what I would probably ask them, since I'm assuming they're going to be coaches, is if you couldn't be a college coach, what would you want to be? What would you want to do with your life?
All right. That's a good one. So once again, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevate Academy. It's been awesome to have Ricky Freed here. He's a tremendous coach, world championships, coached so many players, impacted so many lives, and you're continuing to do so. So keep up the good work, Ricky, and we really appreciate you having us on here.
Dave, thanks for so much.
Talk to you soon, bud.
Keep up the good work. Take care.
Yeah.